Everybody, how's it going? Austin Prechtel, Prechtel Elevate Performance, coming at you live. It's Wednesday, middle of the week. Um, Things are still, kind of crazy in the U.S., but we're gonna work through it, and yeah, that's the way it goes. Today, we're gonna talk about something fun, and when I say fun, I mean just something that's, being real with people, being like talking about, you know, parenthood when I was a stay-at-home dad. Chat a little bit about, kind of what I went through personally, just as a way to kind of shine some light on, what real life can be like sometimes, and being honest and open about it and authentic about it, and potentially, helping other parents, just in general, or soon to be parents, or moms, dads, whether you stay at home or not, like just in general, talking a little bit about what I went through, my experience with struggling with certain things, when I was a stay at home dad, what I did, how I got through it, and yeah, why I'm glad that I didn't give up in that regard. And so I'm going to talk about that today, even though I, if I'm being completely transparent, I kind of have quite a bit of, not necessarily anxiety, but just butterflies in general, talking about stuff like this, just because being vulnerable can be tough sometimes. And so I want to try to be that for people, just to show that it is okay, and then that shit happens, and then that's real life, and that if you're gonna, like, it's better to get it out there and to not like bottle it up and to lie about it to yourself, basically, because once you can acknowledge whatever's going on and recognize it as like a real thing, then you can start to actually work on improving upon it and getting through it. So let's talk about it. So if you didn't see my post earlier today, I talked about the time that I went through when I was a stay-at-home dad for 6 months, because I ended up having to be, our source of childcare, and so I was that, and Jessica was working really long hours, and she was working a lot, and I had to step up to the plate and put my kind of career on hold for the time being, while we were in a specific area that we were trying to live in, and I was trying to find a job in, and it was just not happening, because the market was super saturated in that area. And yeah, I had a bachelor's and a master's degree, and I could not get a job. So started to, I was being a stay-at-home dad, and being a stay-at-home dad was honestly, like, it was honestly probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever had in my entire life. And why that is like, one, I personally, I don't feel like, I, just being honest, that I handle, um, like repetitive, like, things that kids do sometimes, like crying, or like repeating the same things over and over again, and like, for especially when you're a new parent, like I was at that time, being low on sleep, dealing with, just like the stress of being a new dad, being frustrated with me feeling like my career or whatever wasn't going anywhere. There was a lot of like factors going into that, that were at play, that really just kind of like made me feel like hopeless, and kind of like I was a prisoner, of in my life, basically, where I felt like I could not, and it was all like, a lot of it was, I had formed that for myself, and it was like a mental prison more than anything. But that doesn't change the fact that I felt the way that I felt. And so, I kind of started off like it, and it honestly got to the point where I was super depressed. Like, I was super depressed because I was like really stressed out, and I was a stay-at-home dad for the first time in my life, really. And I after about we got to like between the 4 to 6 month mark, I started to really kind of like start to go downhill and kind of fall apart mentally, kind of in a way, just because I felt so much pressure on me, and a lot of it was me putting it on myself, but also I was just generally unhappy with how my life was kind of going at that time, and a lot of that was my own self doing. A lot of that too is just the stress of being like a new parent and being a stay at home dad. It's really draining. Being a stay at home parent in general is very, very, very draining. And a lot of people don't realize that. They just think like, oh, like, you're just, at home and you're just taking care of the kids, and oh, you're just like, like cleaning the house or cooking or all this other stuff. And it's like, nah, like it's fucking hard. Like, let's be honest, like being parent in general, even when you have like childcare and stuff, it's fucking hard, let alone being the source of childcare for your kid like every day. And one of the biggest things I struggle with a lot is that I honestly, like, I never felt like I could get away from like from work, because work was at home. Work was literally, for me at that time, was taking care of my kid. And when you have a normal like day, like when you not have like a normal like day job, like it's one of those things where you get to leave work, right? You get to leave work, and you get to come home, and that's where you get to relax, and that's where you get to, kind of de-stress and get away from, the stresses of work and things like that, and get to like decompress and stuff. Like I didn't. When you're a stay-at-home parent, you don't get that. You don't. You're living at work, and work. There's like the line between like your job and your at home life get blurred a lot, and you end up like feeling like you just can't ever get away from work. And the other thing on top of that too is whenever your significant other, if you have one at that time, they're working too if they've got like a full-time job, especially in the situation that we were in. She was working a lot, like a lot, a lot, a lot. And so it's one of those things where like they're, your significant other, if you've got one, they're working a shit ton. They want to decompress and take some time off of whatever stressful job they may be working, but then you also want to get away too. And so there's this like, like almost like you're both trying, like, let's be honest, you're both trying to get the other one to either like watch the kid, or you're trying to like work on it, like do it together, but you're both stressed out. And so it's just like one of those time like things where it's like, especially when your kid's like little, it's hard to get that time to like decompress and to get away from which, and it sounds like bad, but it's one of those things where it's like you need time for yourself. Like you do. Like if you're a stay-at-home parent and you're constantly being bombarded by your children, like that's stressful as hell. And especially like me not being, and this is something that I've noticed is like, and it's kind of funny because like I'm kind of in a not a caretaker role now. Like if I'm being honest, like I'm not a super like caretaker style kind of like brain, like the way my brain's wired. That's not how I kind of function. I'm a fairly selfish person when it comes to my time, and the flip of that switch to like going from like me being selfish with my time, even whenever it's like doing things with other people, to solely focusing on something like a child that is like just not not rewarding you with a lot of like love or thing like that, like my kid provides now, like as a toddler. It's really hard because you're giving and giving and giving and giving and giving and giving, and you're not seeing a whole lot of like what's the word I'm trying to think of, like reciprocity, where you're not getting a lot back at that time, because the kid's just not developed enough yet. And so that was something that I really kind of struggle with, coming into a caretaker position and not really being somebody who's a big time caretaker, and that was something that I really struggle with, and so dealing with that, all those things at the same time, like I got to a point where I was just like like every day I dreaded, like it got to the point where I was having like, I was like, let's be honest, I was like dreading like waking up. I was dreading having to take care of my kid, and I was dreading the fact that I just wasn't happy. Like and it ended up becoming some sort of like kind of like a toxic like environment for me that I kind of created for myself. And it also became a almost like a not a what's the word I'm looking for? Not a regretful thing, but it almost became like I was like jealous at times of people of other people who were able to go and enjoy their life and have kind of like a career. And at times like I'd be a liar if I wasn't uh, like not necessarily jealous of my significant other, but like I was like I mean I was kind of envious of the fact that like like she was able to do what she was needing to do, but she was the person who was bringing in the being the breadwinner and things like that. And so it's like we had to do it strategically for our family because that was what was best. But I'd be a damn liar if I didn't say like I struggled with not I struggle with feeling like I had a purpose. I guess is what I was kind of getting at. Struggling with like feeling like I was making an impact or contributing to the family or whatever that may be. I was dealing with a lot of those thoughts, and it was really hard to like live like that for me, especially being somebody who was always just like like I definitely struggled whenever I was in grad school, and I've struggled a lot of times in my life. But it's one of those things where I felt like you know, it was one of those things where I felt like for the first time, kind of in my life, things weren't going the way that I wanted them to go, and so I just felt like I was like failing my family, I guess, in a sense, and so. It was one of those things that it was really hard for me to deal with that. Like it came to a point where like I was so like miserable all the time, being a stay-at-home dad that I would just be like laying on the floor like 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 trying to like barter with this like infant, like please like just like like please give me a break, like please like stop like crying or like that those sorts of things. And that's really hard to like and that's kind of like the rawness and the realness of like what parenthood can be like sometimes, where you do have days like that where you like sometimes parenthood is like the highest of highs. It's like you're on cloud nine, like everything is amazing and things are falling into place and your kid loves you and things are like you're feeling the love, you're feeling like that beautiful relationship and cohesiveness as a family, with your kid and your spouse. But there are other times, like honestly, and let's be real, like some days are like horrible. Like some days you're just trying to like just trying to keep your head above water, trying to like like be a parent and be an adult and be you and like have self-care for yourself and all these other things. It can be tough, especially with where my mindset was back then, versus where it is kind of now. And so just recognizing that that's real life and that that's like okay that happens, like that's important, to kind of like be compassionate for yourself and be honest with yourself about these things. Because like honestly, like at that time, like I'd got my master's degree. I was looking for a job. I had not been able to find a job for a while because I was kind of pigeonholed to a specific area. I was in a lot of debt, with my student loans. Kind of out of my element, like I talked about earlier, when it came to being a stay-at-home dad and being a new dad. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any friends or family around. I felt really isolated. I didn't have any motivation, which now I don't like to use that as an excuse because motivation isn't what a lot of people need. What people need is discipline, but I hadn't formed that type of discipline yet for those fatherly duties and situations and things like that, because it was all new to me. It was like being like cast out it's like being thrown into the ocean and be like, all right, swim to shore, and kind of thing. And finding your way to that shore is really hard sometimes. And so to be completely honest, like my mental health was totally shit. It was awful. Like I was really depressed at times. And it was really hard. Like sometimes, I couldn't get myself out of bed, because I just didn't want to go through like basically like what I knew was going to be a really hard time. And, having that negative feedback loop is hard to break when it's going on. And thankfully it broke eventually. I'm going to talk a little bit about how that kind of happened and why that happened. But it was just a combination of a lot of factors that just kind of led to this like super storm, like this super big bullshit storm that I was going through at the time. And I know a lot of parents go through this at some point in time, in their lives, raising their kids and things like that. And that's why I think like it's important to talk about it and acknowledge that it's a real thing, that people go through. Like, I also like hurt myself. I like partially tore my pectoral during that time, so I couldn't fucking work out. I couldn't go like, do the thing that was like my outlet at the time, like which was go to the gym and work out, because the gym had like a daycare that I could take my kid to for like an hour, and that's what I did. That was my outlet. That was like what I got to do to get away from work, which was being at home. And now like especially like, and that's why I feel really bad right now for like a lot of parents who are stay-at-home parents, and that is their outlet or was their outlet. And that, because now, I don't know of any gym daycares that are open right now, like at all. And so, that being taken away from parents right now is why I really, really, really stress, and why I'm so adamant right now about trying to like, get into contact and work with parents who are stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home dads, because like not having that and like being able to work out from home could be a really powerful tool to get a lot of parents, back on their feet and feeling like they're in control, and getting them out of that, like, that dark hole that I was in at one point in time. Give them, hope to kind of, pick themselves up and get back on a more like positive track with their mindset and their life in general. And so, yeah, like honestly, like, I mean, I felt like, and not being able to go to the gym after I hurt myself, I felt like a husk of my former self. I couldn't do the things that, like, the few things that still made me happy at that time. And so it just kind of like snowballed, and eventually, like, my depression got to an all-time high, and I just felt like, I was like, damn, like, I'm a horrible dad. Like, we all have these thoughts sometimes, like, like, am I a bad parent? Like, am I like a bad dad? Like, am I, like, do I deserve to be this kid's parent? Like I'm in control of how this little human, like, grows and develops and like becomes like a fully functional person. And I'm here like, like laying on the floor, like, like bartering with this child. And like, I'm supposed to be the one that's like, partially responsible for how this kid turns out. And that's hard to like, live with that and to do those sorts of things. And so, I was having like negative and intrusive thoughts like that, like what, like, like this kid would be better off without me. Like this kid is so unlucky to like have me as a dad. Like, shit, I feel bad for this kid, like things like that. And like, you have these like, all these thoughts of like, negative self-talk and like self-doubt, and like and it just becomes like a really bad situation that you can find yourself in that you never thought you would have been in at one point in time. And I just, there was a lot of guilt and frustration, and I just wanted to like disappear. Like, I just didn't want to like be like, I didn't want people to see me in this like kind of like what I felt like was like a pathetic state for myself. And so it was one of those things where I just felt like, like I kept telling myself, like, I just need to find a job. I just need to get a job that can at least cover daycare, help cover daycare, and get me to, just get me out of this environment, this toxic environment that I kind of created for myself as a stay-at-home dad. And so, I applied to everything. I applied to work at the local gyms in the area. I applied to be a bag boy on top of applying to, the few jobs that were in the local area at the times. And like, I just kept telling myself, like, like, just keep applying, just keep fucking applying. And I applied, honestly, I applied to over 100 jobs. I applied to over 100 jobs. I think it was like 115 or 117 jobs that I applied to. And I only heard back from two or three of them. One of them was like a half interview, which didn't amount to anything. And the other one was an actual interview, but it was for a job that like was way outside of like my element. And I felt like a complete and total idiot when I was on that job interview. And I felt like I totally flopped it, and that they were probably like laughing at me the entire time after it was all said and done, just because it went so badly. And it had been so long since I'd had like an interview for anything. It was kind of like hard to get back into that like momentum and into that like state of professionalism and things like that. And so, like I had that went badly. And I think finally, like after, like I was applying to like do all sorts of different jobs because I was so like desperate to get out of the situation that I was in, that, eventually, finally on like number 115, I got, I ended up getting an offer in Florida. And so, like obviously we took that because we went to Florida and all that. And it was one of those things where it's like, like I was doing that, like, I was, applying to jobs when my kid was sleeping, because that was the only time that I felt like I could do it. Because by the time the end of the day got around, like I was so burnt out from being a stay-at-home dad, that I just wanted to like escape. I just wanted to get away from the situation, and that came in the form of like, just watching TV, trying to play video games or something like that just to get away. Sometimes it included, drinking. Sometimes it included, other things. And it was just one of those things that it's like, I'm not proud of saying that, but it's one of those things where it's like, escapism is a real thing that people deal with and try to, whatever that may be for you. But escapism is a real thing. And it's something that a lot of people find themselves doing on the daily. And I was definitely, not an exception to that rule during that time of my life. And so I think that it's important to recognize that, it's okay when that shit happens. Just, don't give up hope, because if you, keep trying, you keep telling yourself like, every no is one step closer to a yes. Every day of putting in the work and grinding through it and putting in the reps is just getting you one step closer to where you actually want to be. And so, I got that job. It wasn't the job of my dreams necessarily, and it wasn't the job that, clearly it wasn't the job that I loved and stuck with, because I'm here today doing what I'm doing now. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's just keep at it, basically is what I'm saying, and don't give up hope, because there are a lot of other parents who are going through the same shit that I just kind of described, and there are a lot of parents who are, going through very tough, like emotional, mental struggles right now, especially with quarantine going on, especially with COVID going on. It just makes it that much like more important to be aware of these things and like be on top of these things, and to focus on self-care in whatever way that you need to like try to do that, but try to make sure it's like a constructive and positive form of self-care, because like I don't know, like I just don't want other people to like go through what I went through. But also, if you do are going through it, just like know that you're going to come out on the other side like a lot stronger. If you don't let it beat you down, if you power through it, and eventually you're going to get out of that, you're going to crawl out of that hole, and you're going to feel a hell of a lot better and a lot stronger because of that. So that was long. That was a long live. That was very raw, and one of those things that is not comfortable talking about necessarily, but I think it's something that a lot of parents need to hear, need to be told, or be aware that it's normal that shit happens. If it can happen to me, like it can happen to anybody, kind of thing. And so yeah, don't feel like you're alone or like you're isolated or whatever that may be. And if you are going through something like that right now and you feel that way, reach out to me and we can chat about some strategies or tips or whatever I could maybe potentially provide to try and help you out if you're going through anything like that right now. Not just the parents, other people too, who are kind of going through feelings of isolation and things like that, especially with winter months coming up. It's going to be, happening a lot more and more. So that's my life for today, everybody. I hope that this was, I don't know, useful, helpful, relatable, realistic for, what could potentially happen if you're a new parent or things like that. Just be aware of these things, like try to just be keep stay hopeful and try and keep yourself on kind of like the try and be mindful of how you're feeling and what you're going through, because it can happen a lot quicker than you think it could, than it can, and one day you'll wake up and you'll be like, holy shit, what happened? Like, how am I struggling so hard right now? So that's my life for today. If you got value from this, feel free to give it a like. Let me know what your number one takeaway was in the comments down below. If you're watching this at a later time, hit me with the hashtag replay. Share this with people. If you have somebody who's a parent right now, or if you're a parent, or you know somebody who's going to be a new parent, if you know somebody who has kids right now, or is a stay-at-home parent, or whatever that may be, and you feel like they might be struggling right now, or you feel like they might end up struggling at some point, tag them in this video, share this with them, let them know that it's normal and that it's real life and that it's something that they may or may not go through. But like postpartum, like depression and things like that, super common with women. It's also common with like dads too, because your entire life is literally like completely like flipped on its head. Not even like in a bad way, but just like your life completely changes in a lot of ways. So just be aware of that. So not to scare you from parenthood, because it's pretty fucking awesome in a lot of ways, but it's also really hard in a lot of ways. And new things bring new challenges. Kind of like I like to say, like new levels bring new devils. So just be aware of that shit. So that's my live for today. Hope you got value from this, and I appreciate the hell out of everybody that's watching this. And yeah, give it a share if you got value, if you think somebody's going to get value from it. And I appreciate the heck out of you guys. Let's have a great rest of our day, and I'm going to talk to everybody else tomorrow. Have a good one.